Welcome to this video where we will get to know more about blocking and confounding. Now, whenever we take up an investigation, we would like to get the best answer for the research questions that we have taken up. But in generating experimental data that forms the basis of our modeling and our decision making, we know that there are factors that can confound the experimental data and therefore give very ambiguous answers to our research questions. There can be several confounding factors that can corrupt the experimental data that we collect and therefore make the investigation's outcome look quite ambiguous. Frequently encountered confounding factors could be the experience level of the experimenters. If there are people that can introduce a systemic bias in the data because of the way they handle specimen or the equipment, then we would be introducing confounding factors into our experiment. Another example could be the day in which, for example, a product like a car is manufactured. In the olden days, people would never buy cars if they knew it was manufactured on Monday or Friday, because it was felt that the workmen would not be doing a great job on Monday because they've just returned from their weekend holiday, or on Friday because the weekend is in their mind, so they may not focus on their job. So whether or not it is true, that could be a confounding factor, right? Things like that, the day in which experiments are done, the raw material lots that come in, the experience level of operators, things like that, right, can confound the experimental data, and therefore they could cloud our decision making, right? So what you can do is you can take care of these confounding factors. You do not want these. So one of the ways to handle confounding is by using the idea of blocking. We have talked about it before, but let's look at a few scenarios now. Now, here is our familiar scenario where you have three factors, M, P, and T. We have discussed this before. Let's assume there are factors M, P, and T that affect the outcome Y of a certain process. The experimental team has planned 2 to the power of 3 experiments, that is 8 experiments. So a full factorial on the 3 factors. All this is fine. They understand that things should be run in random order, etc. But the situation is like this. Due to some resource constraints, there will be 2 people who will do the experiments. One happens to be an expert chemist with years of experience in running experiments and so on. And another set of 4 experiments out of these 8 has to be done by a novice chemist, because you may have to do it within the next 3 days, and then people are not available or they are called for other duties within the plant, etc. So it can be just that out of the 8 experiments, 4 can be done by an expert chemist and the 4 will be done by a novice chemist. So the question is, does it matter which experiments are assigned to these 2 people, or there can be a proper way about assigning 4 out of these 8 experiments to each of them, right? The idea is to reduce the bias that either of them could introduce, right, into the experimental data. So we do not want the experience level or the skill level of these chemists clouding our experimental outcomes, because the question here is, which of the factors M, P, and T affect the outcome Y? Alright, so we want to ask the questions about these 3 factors and answer it properly. We do not want other factors to come into this modeling and decision making process. So this is a situation that we need to handle. Which 4 experiments should be done by chemist A and which 4 experiments should be done by chemist B, so that the confounding is completely or at least partially reduced. Okay, it will be great if it is completely reduced. That means if you find 2 people with the same skill level, it doesn't matter. You can assign any of the 4 of 8 experiments randomly to one person and the remaining to the other person. All right, given that there is a possibility of skill level being a confounding factor, how do we assign experiments so as to minimize the confounding in the data that we generate? So this is the question that we seek to answer. And the answer is basically you want to create two blocks of experiments here. One block will be done by experienced chemist, the other block will be done by the inexperienced chemist, but the experiments in each of these blocks will be done in such a way that it poses minimal damage to the research questions that we ask. So basically this slide says not all experimental designs are equal. Now here what you see is as you know, this one on the top left, right, this one on the top left, that is the experimental design plan. In fact, we are not going with this 2 to the power of 3 design analysis to begin with. We will start with something that is very simple, right? So we are going to start with a 2 to the power of 2 design. That means, let's say there are two factors x1 and x2, and then so the full factorial experiment will contain 4 experiments. There are two chemists again, an experienced chemist and an inexperienced chemist, and each of them can do only 2 experiments. All right, so the question is, which 2 of the 4 experiments do we assign to one chemist and which 2 to the other, so that the effect of skill level, if there is any, that will be minimized. So the 4 experiments are indicated here, as you can see. X1 is on the horizontal axis, X2 is represented on the vertical axis. The left hand side corresponds to x1 factor being low, and the right hand side corresponds to x1 factor being high, and the bottom face corresponds to x2 being low, and the top face corresponds to x2 being high. All right, so you can aptly label the corners as -1 -1 because both factors are low there. This will be +1 +1. This will be 1 -1 because x1 is high and x2 is low, and here it will be -1 1 because x1 is low and x2 is high. You can also label them as what is given there. This one will be labeled as brackets 1 because both factors are at low levels. We have been introduced to this notation before. This will be called A because factor x1 is at the higher level, and factor B, which is x2, is at the lower level. So which one is the higher level? It's factor A or x1. Therefore this can be labeled as A. Right? Sometimes these factors are labeled as A, B, C, D, E instead of x1, x2, x3, x4, and x5. Okay, so in that notation, this is called A because in this corner, factor A is high. In this corner, both factors A and B are at their high levels. Therefore, this is labeled as AB. And in this corner, factor B is high where factor A is low. And since factor B is high, that is labeled as B. So I'm sure you're aware of all this notation. Now the question is, I can assign the 4 experiments in this particular way or in this particular way. Let's just take these two situations. Now the circles, right, that denotes the inexperienced chemist, and the star denotes the experiments assigned to the experienced scientist or chemist, right? So these are for the experienced chemist. So this is what it is. All right. In the alternate design, these 2 experiments are assigned to the experienced scientist, and these 2 experiments are assigned to the inexperienced chemist. All right. So these are the possibilities, but I've also remarked at the bottom of each of them, each design, that the block effect, right, the effect of scientist experience, here it will confound the x1 effect because x1 low is assigned to the inexperienced chemist, and x1 high is assigned to the experienced scientist, right? So again I go, the x1 low is assigned to the inexperienced scientist, and the x1 high is assigned to the experienced scientist. Therefore, what happens is the skill level of the scientist will be confounded with the x1 effect. All right, you can see why, because all the experiments with x1 equals low is assigned to the inexperienced scientist. All the experiments with x1 high has been assigned to the experienced chemist. So in this particular case, the skill level of the scientist will be confounded with the direct effect of x1. In this particular case, the second design, what happens is all the experiments with x2 being high is assigned to the experienced scientist, and all the experiments with x2 being low is assigned to the inexperienced scientist. So here the skill level of the scientist or the chemist will be confounded with the x2 effect. That means you would not be able to distinguish whether the difference in the results is due to the x2 factor or is it due to the skill level of the scientist. In exactly the same way as here, if you adopted this assignment, we would not be able to say whether the difference in the measurements in the response y is it due to factor x1 or is it due to the skill level of the scientists who did those experiments. All right, so these two experimental designs will suffer from this problem of entanglement. All right, that means we would be confused whether the differences that we see is due to x1 in this case or due to x2 in this case, or is it due to the skill level of the scientist. So in other terms, this can be called confounding as well. All right, why is this not desirable? Because in any system we have learned that the direct effects are the most significant ones. You do not want the direct effects to be confounded with the skill level of operators, for example. In fact, you do not want the direct effects to be even aliased with even second order interaction effects, right? So we want to keep these things as far apart as possible. So in these two designs that we have seen here, the direct effects, which are considered to be the most significant effects in any process, is confounded, all right, with the skill level of the experimenters. That is not desirable. Okay, if a two-factor interaction or a three-factor interaction, which are less important or less significant typically, right? If the second order interaction effects or the third order interactions, that is confounded with the skill level of the experimenters, it would not be much of a damage, right? But here these two experimental designs have this fundamental problem. Now let's look at this third one. What about this plan? Here, as you can see, the experienced chemist is being given an experiment where x1 is low and x2 is low, as well as an experiment where x1 and x2 are both high. That means the experienced scientist does experiments with x1 being low as well as x1 being high, as well as x2 being low as well as x2 being high. All right, so that is taken care of. The inexperienced scientist gets to do one experiment at, let's say, 1 minus 1. So one experiment where x1 is high and x2 is low, and another experiment which is minus 1 1 where x1 is low and x2 is high. So the inexperienced scientist also gets to do an experiment involving the two levels of both the factors, right? So let's analyze this experimental plan, which is quite different from the plans that we have seen in the earlier slide. So if you look at it, let's compute the effect, direct effect of x1, right? Let's compute the direct effect of x1. So we learned in an earlier presentation when we got to know the design of experiments that you can compute the direct effect of x1 by what? By taking the average of the experiments with high value of x1 and you take the average of the values that you get at the low value of x1, and then you take the difference of the two, you will get the effect of x1. So here, to get the direct effect of x1, so we are not using any numbers here really. We are just doing it conceptually, right? So we're not getting into regression or something. We know the regression will give kind of corresponding answers that you can get by this kind of an averaging approach. So we saw that, right? The effects calculation are related to the regression coefficients. But since we do not have numbers here, we will just do this notationally, right? And just see what we can get out of it. So the direct effect of x1 is going to be the average of these two measurements where x1 is high minus the average of these experiments where x1 is low. So if you do it, so the average of the experiments with x1 is high is this. The average of the experiments with x1 is equal to low is this. So A and AB, you add these two and then you divide by 2 because there are two things that are added. So this is the average when x1 is high. Likewise, this is the average when x1 is low, and then you take the difference. So if you do it, what you will see is that you can write it in this particular way: half A minus B, right? A minus B plus AB minus of this, right? Because you have a minus here. So I hope you can work this out. And in terms of circles and stars, you can write A is a circle, B is also a circle, all right, plus star minus star, because AB is a star and 1 is also a star. So you can write it in this particular way. Okay, so what happens is a circle gets minus by another circle and star gets minus by another star. So if, let's say, experimenter A, or let's say the experienced chemist, were to overestimate typically the value of the outcome by delta units, so the actual reading is H, but the experienced chemist does it as H plus delta. All right. And in the second case, right, in this experiment 1 case, the actual value is U, but systematically this person overestimates it by U plus delta. So when you subtract H plus delta, which is the outcome of experiment AB, from U plus delta, which is the outcome of experiment labeled as 1, both these experiments are done by the experienced chemist, who we assume will introduce a systematic bias of delta to the value that is being measured. So if you subtract H plus delta minus U plus delta, you're going to get H minus U. So the effect of delta vanishes. So the bias that is introduced by this person will be cancelled out if you assign experiments of this type. Similar arguments can be made for the biases that may be introduced by the inexperienced chemist. When you calculate the direct effect of x2 in the similar way by taking the average of the two experiments where x2 is high and subtracting the average of the experimental readings when x2 is low, so you're going to get the direct effect of x2 as half of B plus AB. So that's the average of the experiments where x2 is high, and you subtract the average, which is 1 plus A divided by 2, right? So we have that here. So if you subtract these averages, you can estimate the direct effect of x2. So you will get an expression like this, and you can write it in this particular form. This one, you can just turn things around and then you could put it in this particular form. All right. And then again, notation wise, B and A are circles and A, B and 1 are stars. All right. So what you see again is you get a pattern which is 0 minus 0, or circle minus circle, and you get a pattern like star minus star. Therefore, any systematic biases introduced by the two chemists will cancel out if you assign experiments of this type. We may know it intuitively, but here is a proper analysis of that. So this design is much better than these two designs. Okay, so these two designs have a fundamental flaw, right? In that the direct effects get confounded with the skill level of the operators, all right, or the scientists. Here, that's not a problem. All right, here that problem is overcome, but the skill level of the operators or the scientists or the chemists will confound with some other effect. All right, as you can imagine, the problem has to be somewhere in the data, right? The skill level of people, if they are different, you cannot wish it away. It's going to be reflected somewhere. But the question is, as always, we want these deficiencies or skills to be in places where it does not hurt the understanding of the system. All right, so similarly for human beings, right, we all have flaws. Most of us have flaws, let me put it that way. But interestingly, if our flaws are in places that do not hurt others or us, those flaws are okay. We can work on them over time and get rid of them. So we do not want these flaws to be at undesirable places. Okay, so given that flaws are going to be there in the experimental design, we do not want it to be reflecting in the significant effects that we would like to understand and make use of. Okay, so basically this is the moral, this is the philosophy behind this. All right, so now this is the title that I've given. We need to move biases to places where it hurts less. It'll hurt somewhere, but we need to move it to places where it hurts less. So if the inexperienced chemist, right, we always blame or we consider the inexperienced scientists to have the possibility of committing errors, right? So this is based on that thing. You can also turn it around and talk about what the experienced chemist could do, right? Because of lack of enthusiasm or because of age has caught up with that person, the person is not pretty good at doing things, etc. So all kinds of people exist in the world, right? So we can always turn it around in any way that we want. But let me go with what I've scripted there. If the inexperienced scientists were to measure the output systematically higher by a factor R, so I used the symbol delta in the previous slide to explain this. Then systematically higher by R than if the experienced scientists conducted the experiment. We can see this direct effect calculations, the good design that we showed in the previous slide. It will not be affected on this experimental plan because we see this pattern. Right? We are just looking at the circles because we are talking about the inexperienced scientist here. So you see the pattern, circle minus circle, that is showing up. So any systematic bias of, let's say, R or delta, that will cancel out because you're doing circle minus circle or star minus star. So any systematic biases that experimenters have because of their inexperience or experience can be removed in this particular way. So the idea is systematic errors will not affect the direct estimate. Now this I hope we understand. This is the usual 2 to the power of 2 design done in standard form. This is the label that we will give to it, right? The one that is shown as 1A, B and AB. And what we are also showing here is that in our design, right, 1 and AB were assigned to the experienced chemist, so star 1 and AB, and A and B were assigned to the inexperienced chemist, right? So this is what it is. Now we are filling up this column in between, which is x1 times x2, the two-factor interaction. So what you see here is, 1 minus 1 times minus 1 is plus 1, minus 1 times minus 1 is minus 1, minus 1 times 1 is minus 1, and 1 times 1 is 1. So we know how the x1, x2 column is filled out. So we see that. And what you see is the experiments with x1 times x2 is equal to plus 1 gets assigned to the experienced chemist. The experiments with x1, x2 equals minus 1 gets assigned to the inexperienced chemist. So So if you wanted to calculate the two-factor interaction effect, that means the effect of x1 times x2, what you would do is you would take the average of experiments where x1, x2 is positive. That means experiments marked as label 1 and label AB. You will calculate the average, keep it there, and then you will take the average of experiments where x1 and x2 were low. That means where x1 and x2 multiplication x1 x2 is -1. That means experiments labeled A and B. So you would take the average of these two, you would take the average of these two, and from the average of A, B and 1, you would subtract the average of A and B, right? So that is what is indicated here as the effect of x1 x2. So if you do it, you will find that you have the pattern here, which is going to be star plus star minus circle minus circle. So it's like star. So it is going to be half of star plus star minus circle plus circle. So you can see, in fact, here the biases will become additive. All right. So if the true value of experiment 1 was h, it will be measured as h plus delta. If that by this experienced chemist, and if the true value of AB was let's say y, it will be measured as y plus delta, because this delta is a systematic bias, let's say, that is introduced by the experienced chemist. You could also do the same thing for the other person, right? So what happens here is you're going to have h plus delta plus y plus delta. So this delta and delta will add up to give you 2 delta. So there is going to be a problem introduced by this experimental design. But the nice thing is this problem will be reflected as confounded with this two-factor interaction term. All right. So the problem comes, the confounding problem, if the skill level of the operators are different, it affects the two-factor interaction here. All right, which is better than the skill level affecting the direct effect x1 or x2. So that is what I said before. If the skill levels of people are different and you have to deploy them to do the experiments, it will get reflected somewhere. It will make something difficult somewhere. But we just push around the problem to a place where it hurts the least. And in this particular case, in this particular problem, it will affect least if the skill level is confounded with the two-factor interaction effect. All right, so that is what this is. So this experimental plan will suffer from the block effect, but unfortunately, if you are constrained by the circumstances and only 2 experiments can be done by each chemist, then this experimental plan is better than the other 2 earlier plans that we introduced. Okay, so if x1 x2, which is the high order interaction, is equal to -1, you assign that to block 1, so the first chemist. And if x1 x2 is equal to +1, then you assign it to the block 2. So you run the experiment in 2 blocks. One block will be done by scientist 1, the other block will be done by scientist 2. All right, so the basic idea is the high order interaction, right? The high order interaction, you let it be affected by the confounding factor. That is the idea. All right, so block 1, let's say, is the inexperienced chemist. That is a person with, let's say, a possible confoundment because of the skill level. So you allow the difference in skill levels to affect the higher order interaction terms. That will make your experiments as safe as possible. You do not want the confounding factor to affect the lower order terms like the direct effects or the two-factor interaction effects if you can help it, right? So always try to let the confounding factor affect the highest or the higher order interactions in your system. Okay, so that's the message we take from this simple two-factor experimental design where each chemist can do only 2 experiments. Now, so there are other scenarios that also exists. It's not only the skill level of operators or chemists, etc. There are other confounding factors as well. Look at this scenario where the raw material to conduct experiments, right, it arrives in batches. And each batch, right, each packet of raw material that you get can be different. All right. Within a packet, we can assume that the contents are homogeneous. But between packets, right, that means packet A and packet B, there could be slight differences in the quality of the raw material. And each packet allows us to only conduct 2 experiments. So we can treat the raw material packet as a block. And we do not want the raw material quality to affect our experimental outcomes. We know that there is an issue with the raw material quality that comes in each packet, right? There could be differences, but we do not want these differences to cloud our experimental outcomes when we are trying to find out, for example, what is the best temperature and pressure to operate the batch reactor, for example, right? So our investigation is focused on the best temperature and the best pressure to operate the system. We do not want the raw material quality to affect our experimental effort. So here x1 can be temperature, x2 can be pressure, and the confounding factor can be raw material quality. All right. So what we do in this case is, when we get the first packet of raw material, we can assign it to experiments 1 and AB. And the second batch of raw material, when it comes, the second packet when it comes, we can assign it to experiments A and B. The same idea. So when we get packet 1, we can assign it to packet 1 to assign it to these 2 experiments. And packet 2, we can assign it to this experiment and this experiment. So the pattern is very similar, right? Here the blocking is in terms of the packets of raw material rather than the skill level of operators. All right. It would be bad if we assigned the first batch of raw materials to these 2 experiments and the second batch of raw material to these 2 experiments, because in this, if you were to do this, and let's say this factor is temperature and this factor is pressure, what will happen is the raw material quality in this case will be confounded with the effect of temperature. We do not know if the differences in raw material quality or if the differences in temperature settings affected the yield that we were going to get in this batch reactor. All right. So that is the basic idea. So not only we should be worried about contamination of the broth in the batch processes, for example, we should also be worried about contamination of data due to these confounding factors. So this is good, this is not good. Okay, so this is a scenario where the blocking is based on the packets of raw material that we receive. We already learned that you randomize for the unknown and you block for the known. So if you know that the skill level of operators or scientists or the batches of raw material can be variable, right? You know them ahead of time and then you handle it by this idea of blocking. In this slide and the next slide, the material that we have already considered is repeated, although in the form of neat diagrams. So I will not get into these 2 slides. You can gloss over it if you want. Basically, we are going to say this is a flawed design, and the effects are illustrated here in this notation, etc. And this kind of a design is much better, right? It is going to be much better because it will not affect the direct effect, etc. So basically, now if we run the 4 experiments in 2 blocks, here is a table where you can see the run, right, indicated by the labels brackets 1, A, B and AB. So you know the moment it is 1, it is going to be both factors A and B are at the low level. If it is AB, both factors are at the high level. If it is A, factor A is at the high level and factor B is at the low level. And if it is B, factor B is at the high level and factor A is at the low level. All right, so that is clear for us. And then I, right, this is the I which stands for 1, so everywhere it is going to be plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 and plus 1, right? So that is what I is. And then AB, right, so you multiply these two and you put it here, etc., etc. So you can fill out this column as well. So what you see here is that these experiments, right, are assigned to block 1, which you can assign to one of the scientists, and these experiments you assign to block 2, which you can assign to one of the scientists. So the usual story of the effects A, B and AB, it is expected that the interaction effect will be smaller than the direct effect, right? So the linear effects, the direct effects are going to be, or often believed to be significant compared to the interaction effect. And therefore, you don't let the blocks be confounded by, with factors A and B, the direct effects A and B. So we sacrifice, right? We sacrifice the precise estimation of the interaction effect. We say, I want precise estimation of the A and B effect. Therefore, don't let the blocking be based on factors A or factor B. Compared to the direct effects A and B, the interaction effect AB is going to be smaller. That is the belief. Therefore, allow the blocks to be chosen based on the values of this AB term, the interaction term. So the idea is, if AB equals minus 1, block 2 is assigned. If AB is equal to plus 1, assign it to block 1. Okay, so that is what this statement says. So we let the block be decided by the higher order interactions or the highest order interactions that exist in your process. All right, don't let it come to lower order interactions or direct effects. So now we return to this 3-factor problem. All right, that is what we started with by having this problem of M, P and T, those 3 factors. And we asked the question, if 8 experiments can be done by 2 scientists, possibly of different skill levels, and each one can do only 4 experiments, what's the best assignment? All right, so the pattern of experiments is shown here. So if it's a 3-factor thing, we show it as a cube, and the experimental points for a 2 to the power of 3 design are located at the vertices of the cube. So what is shown there should be very readable for you. And so this is going to be 1 because brackets 1 because all the factors are at the low there. This is going to be A, B, C because all the 3 factors are at the high level in that particular location. This is BC because A is going to be minus 1 here. B and C are going to be at the high values. Therefore, this is labeled as BC, etc. So you know the labeling process. So the question is, how do you assign these 2 experiments to 2 blocks so that block 1 will be done by one scientist and block 2 will be done by the other scientist? Okay, so what have we learned from our experience in looking at this 2-factor problem is that we let the blocks to be decided by the highest order or higher order interaction terms. So that is the idea. So that is why we look at simple systems first, and then we transfer that experience into a slightly higher dimensional problems. So this is the key idea that we can get from there. So the highest order interaction here is ABC, right? Luckily, we have 2 to the power of 3 experiments to do, and each person can do only 4 experiments, right? There are 2 scientists and each can do only 4. So basically, right, it is very similar to planning for a half factorial design. It's very similar to that. And there, in doing fractional factorial designs, we were looking at the aliases, right? We were looking at the resolution, things like that. And always the idea was keep the aliases between very high order interaction and very low order interaction. You do not want a direct effect to be aliased with a 2-factor interaction or another direct effect. So we were trying to keep these aliases as convenient as possible. A similar idea here. Okay, so each person can do only 2 to the power of 2 experiments, and there will be 2 scientists, so that will give you 2 to the power of 3. So it is like 2 to the power of 1, right, where this 2 can be written as 2 to the power of 1, this is 2 to the power of 2, this is 2 to the power of 3. So this is the total number of experiments. This is the experiment that can be done by one person, any one person, and this is whatever remains, right? This is fixed because we know how many total number of experiments we are going to do. This is also fixed because we know how many experiments can be done by one person. So this will tell us how many people we need. So we need 2 people here. So there is an experienced chemist and an inexperienced chemist. So that tells us that. And the idea is to just have one, because this is 1, you just have one equivalent of a design generator. So you have to just choose one interaction and confound it with the blocks. So this 1 indicates that. So here the highest order interaction is ABC. Therefore, I'm going to use the values of ABC to decide the blocking. All right, let us see how we proceed. So this one we understand is a standard 2 to the power of 3 design in 3 factors, right? So minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1 for column 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 1, 1 for column 2, 4 minuses followed by 4 pluses for column 3. So this is written in a standard order, and what we have also labeled here is this one is brackets 1, this is ABC, and this is C for all the reasons that we already know. Okay, now I can generate, once this basic thing is available, I can generate 2-factor interaction columns like you see here, and then I can also design the 3-factor interaction column. All right, so how do I get this minus 1? As you know, I'm going to take x1, x2 and x3 corresponding to that experiment. You multiply the 3, you will get minus 1. That's how all these things are designed. Okay, now what I'm trying to say here is we start with the basic table, and then we can list out these interactions. And since this problem can have 2-factor interactions as well as 3-factor interactions, we can write out all those columns. And this is the highest order interaction. And we also expect it to be the least significant of the interactions. We think the direct effects will be the most significant, followed by the 2-factor interaction terms. And we think the 3-factor interaction term will be the least significant. Will it hold for all systems? No. Maybe not. We cannot make a definite statement that the 3rd-factor interaction or the 3-factor interaction will be the least significant for all systems. But for most systems, that will hold true. All right, for most systems that will hold true. And when you are working with situations where you have no a priori information, you're just working on a uniform prior, so to say. That means you do not have any additional information about the system. These methods are designed to work for those situations. So our assumption that the 3rd order interaction is going to be the least significant is because of that thing that we are working on a generic problem on which we do not know much about. So the general experience is the 3rd-factor interaction is going to be less significant than the direct effects or the 2-factor interaction effects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the x1, x2, x3 entries, the column, and wherever I see minus 1, I'm going to assign it to star block, right? So wherever it is minus 1, I'm going to assign it to the star block, and wherever it is plus 1, I'm going to assign it to the circle block. So the star may be done by the experienced scientist, and that's called block 1, and the circle experiments will be done by the inexperienced scientist, which is referred to as block 2, right? Or if you are talking about the raw material quality, right, the packets and all that, so the experiments marked star will be done using raw material of batch 1. That means each packet of raw material only allows us to do 4 experiments. So when I get raw material packet 1, I will do experiments brackets 1, AB, AC and BC with it. Everything that's marked star, those 4 experiments I will complete using packet 1. Using packet 2, I'll do the other 4 experiments. All right, so that's how we can handle 3-factor experiments, because there are going to be 2 people, so you need 2 blocks. So you need to look at only one kind of design generator, if you can use that word. So the natural design generator here will be x1, x2, x3 column. Now imagine this scenario, which is slightly more complex, where you have 8 experiments to be completed, right? The exact same 8 experiments to be completed, but each experimenter can only do 2 experiments. And there are 4 lab technicians who can do those experiments, and their skill level is possibly different. You understand? So we have so far looked at problems where, or situations where, for example, 4 experiments had to be done and there were 2 people and each of them has to be assigned 2 experiments each, or there were 8 experiments to do and there were 2 people and each of them can do only 4 experiments each. So in both these cases, you have to just design 2 blocks, block 1 and block 2. Now in this new situation that I'm talking about, there are 4 scientists and each of them can do only 2 experiments. And unfortunately, the skill levels of these 4 people are different. So the question is, how do you assign these experiments into 4 blocks so that the damage or the confounding effect of the skill level of these technicians on the conclusions of your investigation is minimal? So how do you design an experiment with 4 blocks? That is a very critical question that we may have to answer later. But before we go there, we still are doing this same thing where we have 3-factor experiments, that is 2 to the power of 3 design. We have to do it in 2 blocks, as we have seen later. So we are just going to do a little bit of analysis of that. As we have seen earlier, the 3-factor experiments in 2 blocks. So experiments 1, A, B, AC and BC are done in block 1. All right, experiments 1, AB, AC and BC, they are done in block 1. So this is block 1, block 1, block 1, block 1, right? The other experiments are in block 2, and those are now marked with stars and circles, right? So here we did not have anything assigned. Now we are using stars and circles to experiment to indicate which experiments will be done by the experienced chemist and which one will be done by the inexperienced chemist. If you do not want to carry these terms as experienced chemist and inexperienced chemist, you can always say which experiments will be done in block 1 and which experiments will be done as block 2. So this is what you see here. And then if you compute the direct effect of x1, what do you have to do? To compute the direct effect of x1, you take the average of these 4 experiments and you take the average of these 4 experiments, and from this average you subtract this average. So that is what is indicated here. So the average of the experiments on the right face of the cube is shown here. The average of the experiments on the left face of the cube when x1 is -1 is shown here, and if you put them all together, you can write it in this particular way, and then you can also indicate it by circles and stars, right? So for example, A is a circle and B is also a circle. AB is a star, and so is experiment 1. All right, so block 1 experiments are indicated by star and block 2 experiments are indicated by circles. All right, so you can do it this way, and you can always see a circle cancels with another circle and a star cancels with another star. There are 2 instances of each of these happening. Star cancelling with one star, another star cancelling with another star, right? Same for circle. So if the skill level of people is different and they introduce a systematic bias in their experimental data, that will be taken care of. So the direct effect will not be affected by the differences in skill levels of operators and the systematic biases that skill level might introduce in the experimental data. So you can do this calculation for factor x2 or factor x3 or factor A. You can check that. You can also check this for two-factor interactions. There you calculate the two-factor interaction effects, and then you will find that the block is not confounded with those estimates of the effects. All right. So but if you do it for x1, x2, x3, right? If you try to find out the three-factor effect, you will see it will have 4 stars adding up and 4 circles adding up. You will not see 2 stars cancelling another 2 stars and 2 circles cancelling another 2 circles. So you will see that you get the confounding effect to show up in the x1, x2, x3 effect. But we do not care about it because we believe that the x1, x2, x3 effect is so small that it will not affect the key conclusions we draw from the experiment and the key strategies we will plan later. Okay, so if at all we have to live with differences in the skill levels of operators or the limitations imposed by each packet of raw material, we have to confound those things with the third order interaction effect. So that is what it is, and this is a different view of it. Right, this is a different view of it. I will not go into it in detail. Everything that has been said is said. So basic messages: let the third order interaction, which is the highest order interaction in the system, you let it decide the blocks. Right, the skill level will be confounded with the third order interaction effect. So ABC column is used to block for the known sources of problems in the system. Okay, so this same thing is shown in a different way, right? In a neat way, it's shown here. That's all. Now, if you're going to do the 2 to the power of 4 design in 2 blocks, so the idea is very simple. I do not want to belabor this point. So in 2 blocks means each person will do 8 experiments. So total of 16 experiments have to be done. You have to do it with 2 people. With possibly different skill levels, so you have to assign these experiments into 2 blocks. So it's again 2 to the power of 4 is going to be 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 1. So this is the number of experiments each person will do. This is the total number of experiments that needs to be done. This is the number of people, right? So or this is the number of blocks, if you like it that way. So we have to have one design generator in this case, and we know we will choose the blocks based on the highest order interaction. So we will look at A, B, C, D column, and we assume that it is going to be the most insignificant effect compared to the direct effects, 2-factor interaction effects, and the 3-factor interaction effects. So this is a spot which will not hurt us. Therefore, experiments that have A, B, C, D equals +1, we will assign to block 1. Right? That is what I have colored in yellow. So anything that's colored in yellow means that we are going to assign it to block 1. So the 8 experiments to block 1 are indicated here. The remaining 8 experiments will go into block 2. So you can represent it in this particular way, right? The 16 experiments are shown here in 2 using 2 cubes. One cube is for D being negative, the factor D, x4 factor being low, and this cube is for x4 factor being high. And then the 2 blocks, the experiments that will be assigned to 2 blocks are shown using filled circles or empty circles, right? So this is another view of the same thing. So now comes the question that I had posed earlier. We need to conduct experiments, 8 experiments, and we have to use 4 experimenters who may have different skill levels. That means each person can do only 2 experiments, right? That can be due to a union kind of a decision where we cannot overwork people. So they say, well, people cannot do more than 2 experiments on a single day. The 8 experiments have to be completed on a single day. Therefore, each can do only 2 experiments. So find 4 experimenters. And when you found those 4 experimenters, unfortunately, they may have different skill levels. Of course, you can give them training, etc. That helps to have a pool of almost same skill level people. But assuming it's not there, how do we assign the experiments to the 4 experimenters? All right. So the number of experiments that need to be done is 2 to the power of 3, and each person can do only 2 to the power of 1, and now you must have, you know, 4 experimenters, right? So this, as usual, is the number of experiments that can be done by one person, so we need 4 people. So this shows that we may require 2 generators. So what could be the 2 generators, or what could be the factors, the 2 factors that decide the blocks? All right, so this is a question we will come to next. All right, so the alternate scenarios could be like this. For example, the raw material packet scenario is this: 2 experiments can be done with each packet of raw material, and there are 4 packets available, and each packet is a block. So the raw material quality is different in each packet. 4 packets are available, but only 2 experiments can be done with each packet. So now how do you assign the 8 experiments to these 4 packets, or how do you assign the 4 packets to each of those experiments that are out there? All right, will you assign 2 packets to experiments 1 and 2, the next packet to this? Will you do it that way, or would you have a smarter way of looking at it? All right, so this is another case where, another scenario where day on which the experiment is done is believed to affect the outcome of the experiment, right? People may be lethargic on Monday, people may get into the holiday mood on Friday. Therefore, given that this cannot be avoided, how do you minimize the effect of the day in which the experiment should be done? So to answer that question, 2 designs have been put up here, right? So the different colors indicate different blocks, and we are going to put it in 4 blocks. Therefore we have used 4 colors, right? Yellow, green, purple and blue. So one proposed experimental plan is this, another proposed experimental plan is this. The question is, which of the 2 designs is better, or can you come up with a better design than even these 2? So that's the question one might be interested in answering. I will take a break here, and then we will look at this problem in another video. Thank you for your time.